Yeah, it looks good.
Sick. Hey, right on. I did something, Dad. See? Told you.
Welcome everybody, and welcome to Connor from Arabella. How you doing?
How's it going, everybody?
So, could you give us a quick sort of recap on yourself and the band, kind of how you got to where you are now, and where you are now in terms of what the band's goal is and sound, all that general stuff?
Yeah, so started back in 2017. We were a band formerly known as Known by Numbers, and we were trying to be a cookie cutter metalcore band. Just really wasn't cutting out, and so started kind of rebranded as Erabella. Wanted to go more of like a melodic hardcore, post hardcore, and I actually so we started, writing just a little bit more chordy driven, prettier type of music instead of riff driven, metalcore type stuff. But yeah, so I guess I kind of got a little sidetracked there. I'm Connor. I play guitar and do all the clean singing in the band. So anyway, to get back on track, yeah, we just started writing different types of, just feeling out different types of hardcore. And I think we kind of found a nice little post-hardcore pocket for us. Like I was saying a little earlier, I think that categorizing bands in genres now has become a little chaotic and a little redundant in some ways in some of the namings of different genres and, how you classify yourselves. But yeah, so that's kind of what we've been doing. We actually just put out a record back in July. Fun COVID record. That was a lot of fun to put out. We were expected to, we wanted to do a lot of tours and we had a lot of stuff planned for that. And just totally like, we signed a record deal December, I think, of 2019 and had all this stuff planned for 2020, released a single in March. Everything, started shutting down this week. You've seen all the posts of like a year ago and shit. So, and it just all kind of fell through. So we just had to sort of adapt and do the best we could online, and push it to streaming and, different stream hosting sites for the music video and, editorial playlist for Spotify and just get it in front of as many people as possible since we couldn't tour or do any shows on it, or sell merch. So, it was just tough. But right now, we've kind of managed to coast all the way through. We just finished up a single with Beau Burchell. We did a kind of like it was weird. We didn't go to him. We did a just kind of like a quick weekend session where we used a studio here. We actually used a buddy of mine, Joe Cacharo's, shout out. We used his studio and did kind of like a Skype session with Bo, and just kind of back and forth. He'd be like, all right, you guys kind of brainstorm on this part. I'll brainstorm on this part. And, so Giovanni and I would sit and write. Austin would help, with different chord structures and stuff like that. And then, so I think we kind of came out of it was definitely a different process. It didn't feel rushed is kind of a harsh word, but at the same time, we only had a weekend. We only had 2 days to really crank out a single. So, we had to really just buckle down. But at the same time, like as hurried along as it sort of felt, I think we came out with something really, really crushing. Like, wrote a real ass beater. I'm pretty excited to release it.
Nice. Do you know? So you told me, I think earlier, that you guys aren't locked into a date yet, right? You're still kind of ramping it up.
Yeah. So the process right now, and I've said this personally on my own podcast, my band has kind of come to agree with this a little bit, but I think that where the music industry is going is that in order for artists to survive, you have to release content on a regular basis. With the way streaming has become and the way people take in music and content in general, I think people have to, bands, artists have to put that out regularly. And so I think you're going to see a lot of bands and artists put out singles regularly, or like EPs on a regular basis. Like what we're trying to do is release a single every few months, get it up to a few songs every few months. And just, that way we're not putting out, we're not spending a bunch of time writing an EP, putting out an EP, doing a whole release for an EP, and bam, it's out for like a month. It's in front of everybody's face for like a month. And what happens after a band puts out an album? You fucking listen to it on repeat and you're like, yeah. And then your next favorite band puts out a new album, you're onto that. And so you shelf the last thing that you were just doing. So in order to, maintain, I think, relevance in front of people nowadays, I think you have to continuously put out content, whether it's creative content, like Arabella is just starting to get on TikTok now, and we're gonna start experimenting with that. I don't, who the fuck knows, but so yeah, it's just kind of using all avenues of online right now until shows come back. I don't know about you guys down there, but there's very little. There's like rumors, just kind of stuff spreading around, like, oh, maybe fall, or maybe, late 2021, early 2022. Who knows? So.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit nebulous, but like you were saying, we're all trying to seek out every avenue we can. And speaking of the single thing, and part of what you mentioned earlier with both subgenres and trying to sort of reinvent yourself and things like that, I had some questions about the EP from last July, because it's awesome and it's different. I was asking about the genre thing because I saw on your Facebook, I believe it's listed as melodic hardcore, and I was thinking of it as like post-hardcore, which is such a broad and differing phrase from person to person. And the way I always think of it is like, it really depends on who you're talking to about music as to which terminology you're going to use. Because like you and I could say post-hardcore or whatever and know exactly at least the general ballpark. Then someone else, I might, instead of saying my band is, oh, we're heavy pop punk and we have some prog influences on our new stuff, whatever. But then
you can't like say that to everybody.
Right. And most people are just like, yeah, it's a rock band, which totally.
Yeah.
And I think, but the thing that interested me as someone who, just like you, were navigating this classification and promotion thing, the thing that stood out to me most about y'all's last record was it is in this spot of post-hardcore, like you said, the ambient stuff. It's heavy, but it's not riffy or chuggy most of the time, that was one of the things I noticed immediately, and I'm glad you mentioned it. But still, each song feels like it has a distinct sub-genre style. Like none of the songs on that EP are the same thing, like next to each other, which I thought was great. It gave you a different flavor for each one. So my question is, how conscious was that, or was it just, here's our greatest variety of songs that we want to work on for this release?
So basically it was kind of, let's do a bunch of different songs. Let's do a bunch of songs that convey different emotions, so each song, it was, what's the song calling for? It's not, we didn't want to like pigeonhole ourselves into one particular thing. And like you said, post-hardcore is such a broad genre. It's almost cheating in a way. It's almost like
it's a catch-all term.
Yeah. It's almost like taking the easy way out and being like, oh, we're post-hardcore, like we don't have to fucking think about anything or name ourselves. It's just,
I think that's a good thing. It gives you an audience, but it gives you freedom too.
That's kind of where I'm at. So we wrote each song, it would just kind of start with a riff or maybe an idea or something we'd been working on for a long time. I Wish You Weren't Welcome that song was completely rewritten. That song was rewritten a lot. You know how it goes. You have one thing that you start with in pre-production and you go through the whole process, and by the, if the song was a good bare bones song, it'll change a ton. I mean, so that's kind of what it was. And that was one that changed a lot. But Casket Talk, like the real ass beater on that record, that song changed. That song virtually didn't change at all from how we had written it. We threw in like a few different parts and reworked one of the riffs and added a few different leads to just kind of give it that like ominous, like the we threw in just little tiny leads and things that gave it a different feel. But yeah, for the most part, that song had been written for like a year and a half prior to that. So yeah, the whole process, it just sort of started, at least for us, when we would write the songs, whatever it started with, that's just kind of the flow that we would go with. So if it was a riffy song, like a really kind of like how Hesitation Anxiety starts with like the da-na-na, da-da-da-da-na-na, we just kept writing to that particular style. So if it was a little chord, a little chordy driven, a little bit more like playful and broken up, kind of like Hesitation Anxiety is, we wrote that way. But if it was a little more cleaner with, if it was a little bit softer of a song like Baudelaire, we would write kind of in that direction. So it wasn't that we were really pigeonholing ourselves and nailing ourselves down to one particular genre. It was just, what does the song call for? And we kept, but we still kept it with our same sound. You know what I mean? So we still did it with our same exact sound.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I liked it. And I'm stoked that you answered it that way, because all those things you were describing was basically what I was envisioning or guessing, which is, yeah, you have that distinct Arabella sound, but each song, like you said, it's keyed to a specific emotion. And that I was trying to figure out why they were set apart so well for me while I was listening. And I think that's a great description, especially because I was going from, like you said, that most of them were a little more on the chordy, strummy side. And then you have the one really extra heavy riffy song. But I thought what was interesting, and if you can speak to this from a writing perspective as well, is most of the band, most of the instrumental worked as a kind of amorphous but singular rhythmic unit that was playing off of the lead vocals. And it seemed like it was just constantly sort of flowing into different grooves and a back and forth, which I felt was unique. I'm more of a riff guy most of the time, so to hear something that felt a little more open and kind of not freeing or less forward motion sometimes, and then sometimes a ton of it. Like, how does that work with the vocals and this sort of semi-ambient but still heavy genre?
So we actually did the vocals last. So the vocals were written to the instrumentals, which I often find is kind of the normal way to do it. I know sometimes some people will do it backwards, but we wrote it with we would write, we would fine tune the instrumentals and really, make sure everything was all nice and tight there. And then we would sit with the songs and kind of figure out like, what's the emotion? What's the feel? Like, what am I getting? What am I conveying here? And, so when we were doing the vocals, we would put certain emotions, and certain, like certain oomphes and certain, feels behind, or how we articulated a certain word to give it a certain, feel or emotion, to, really get across and convey the message of the song and what it's about. So I think, for example, one night, so when we were out in when we were recording the record, we stayed in like an Airbnb, and the Airbnb was a camper trailer on this family in this backyard of this house. It was super dope. It was a really, really nice house, really, really nice camper trailer. So, but I was laying in bed one night, and we would just listen to it like headphones on, and just lay in our bunks and just listen to the songs over and over. Chris and I would over and over again, just until we kind of found a groove or a melody that we really liked. And then, for year 11, are you an anime fan? Do you like anime?
Yeah, for sure.
So don't forget, our song Year 11, don't forget October 3rd, Year 11 is about Full Metal Alchemist. So Chris, our vocalist, is a really, really big anime nerd. He got me into one anime. It's Attack on Titan. I've been following that religiously.
I literally just caught up last night, and I was like, this is the best, like, anti-war, anti-fascism, dark as fuck show. Like, it is upsetting.
Dude, it's crazy. That show is fucking. If we can go off, fuck whatever. Fuck your rubric that you had for tonight. We're gonna talk about anime, and we're gonna talk about Attack on Titan.
Dude, I could.
No, it was. I'm following along on Hulu, and they're releasing. Like, I am so ADD. My brain doesn't work this way, and I get so much shit for this, but like, I hate watching shit with subtitles. Like, I don't watch shit with subtitles because I can't concentrate. And so I'm a weeb, whatever. I'm a loser. I'm a dweeb. I don't care. But I wait for the dubbed episodes, and they're like a month behind. So it's like agonizing.
Yeah.
So I should probably just get a Funimation account, which is what I'm supposed to do, apparently. So
yeah, I'm sort of the opposite. Like, I totally get where you're coming from with subtitles, but I almost always go subtitles just because, I don't know, something about, especially on the shows I like, especially like, I'm really into My Hero Academia. And
oh man, yeah.
I've just rewatched it recently, and I was like, the jokes in this, I don't feel work the same in English, or they're not as weird. So that's where like I go with it. But then the downside is the subtitles are not always 100% like what they mean. So you're like, what? Like, and you get lost for a second.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I know it's so like it's so ignorant, but it's like, even so like, my dad is hard of hearing, and when I go over to my pop's place and we're watching a movie and he has to turn on subtitles for like the Avengers or something, I fucking hate it, because it comes up and I'm reading the shit and I'm not watching the movie, and it's a distraction for me. My tiny little gorilla brain can't figure it out. So whatever, make fun of me, everybody. I'm sorry. I'll take an L on this one.
No, dude, that makes total sense. And I mean, I always have that debate. There are some shows in English, like, I don't know if you've ever watched The Expanse, but they have sort of a language or a dialect in it that's meant to be this like certain region of space that's like lower class, like the worker class. Yeah. And it's very like Cajun, pidgin kind of inspired stuff. And obviously lots of different cultures are like blended into it, but I didn't read the book, so I'm like, I don't really know what they're saying, so I have to watch it with subtitles. But everything else, I'm like, I can understand it in English. So I was like, I'm gonna see if I can like train my brain to only look at the subtitles when I consciously need to, instead of like watching them first. But easier said than done.
And, I should become more cultured and probably do that. But, like, also, I'm weird with animes. Like, sometimes the animation just throws me through a loop, and I get out of the thought of the story. But Attack on Titan doesn't do that, so I really vibe with it. But
yeah, and I watch that. Speaking of laugh at me, other anime fans, but maybe it's because I didn't rewatch the series like in the long waits between seasons, but characters will come back or things will happen, and I'm like, I know I should know who that is. And I'm pretty good at this. Like, I'll get annoyed at other people by accident for like not remembering something, but Attack on Titan, I'm like, I'm just going to pretend like I know what's going on, and one day I'll just rewatch it all straight through, and then I'll be like, oh, that's what was happening.
Yeah. It's Chris got me into it, and just, he was like, dude, because he's been trying to get me into anime. He tried to get me into Full Full Metal Alchemist, and I watched like the first episode where like the dog, like I understand all the dog memes, I get it. So like
That's
like,
about as far as I've gotten too. I know I need to watch it though.
Because of that one episode, it's like the darkest episode. You know, I'm up to date on the memes, but yeah, Attack on Titan just really like captured my inner weebiness. So I don't know. That's what the hell were we talking about before this? What was your question? I'm so sorry.
No, you were
started
good
talking
because
about-
it was incredible because I was literally just thinking about that same thing because I was watching it last night, and I think was a new episode just went up today. But anyway, we were talking about writing and subgenres and how you guys were going off the emotion, and as you were talking about how you would start or while you were recording and kind of just listening over and over. My question will actually finish. I'll wait one more minute and finish telling me about when you guys were in the bunk, like letting it kind of sink in and figuring out where to go with it.
Yeah. So, so when we would do that, we would, really kind of immerse ourselves. Like, what am I feeling? Like, what are we, and Chris and I would be in constant communication about like, what's the song about? And so, when Chris is my vocalist, by the way. Sorry, I don't know if that was said or implied, but now it's on there. When Chris and I were writing that stuff, Chris usually writes the theme of the song, and I write the choruses to the theme of the song. So I just, the year 11 chorus just sort of like came to me. I was like in my bunk, and I just sat up and I was like, da, 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 da. And I was like, Chris, I got it. And so this, sometimes it kind of comes to you like that, but a lot of the songs were written just about, about life, kind of about, sort of getting into that dark place I think that everybody gets to at some point. I know Chris has had experience with that and, wrote to a lot of that type of emotion. And so we wanted the instruments to reflect that. And I think they do, especially for the title track, Familiar Gray, and the music video and how that turned out. It was all, we all wanted it to be very cohesive, very, just very flowing, just we wanted it all to flow very nicely. So
yeah, well that's awesome. I love that you're basically just confirming all of my sort of interpretations of it, because I was feeling all of that, and it was cool to hear about the vocals, and I agree. I think most people do, especially if we're talking heavier music where the instrumental to the audience is actually as important as the vocals a lot of the times. Mm-hmm. We'll start with that. So rewinding back to that starting place, as a guitar player, how do you could give us, even if you want to choose one of the specific songs and give us like a day in the life of like how do you start from square one and what takes it to the next step and so on, literally from a playing perspective?
I think that to kind of answer that, I don't ever answer anything directly. I always have a big like fucking thing. But a big part of our problem for a long time was finding out how we write together and how, for a lot of the Familiar Gray, Giovanni, those are compositions written by Giovanni, our other guitarist. And, there would be a lot of tweaks that would, I or Austin would make, or Bo would make on guitar. But, for the most part, Giovanni would write a lot of that stuff because we found that we didn't really write well in a group. And that was a lot of in part because we didn't have a drummer. Now that we have a solid drummer, and have one that's, that we've kind of found that, that we write really, really well with him. I've particularly found that him and I write really well together. So we've kind of found, moving forward, we've kind of found our niche a little bit in how we write and how we compose music and the process in which it goes through. A lot of times, for the most part, it would start off as like a guitar riff, and then our bass player would write the drums to it. But now we have a drummer that's fluent in, writing MIDI drums and, obviously really solid on his chops. So, it makes writing a lot easier when you have a drummer that can put together really, really sick drum patterns. And then, he sends that over. He's like, hey man, I just wrote this little bit. I'll write like a riff along to that. And he'll go, hey, maybe I'm feeling now, maybe you do something like this on the guitar. So I'll write something like that. he'll, and we'll just go back and forth that way. And Giovanni continues to do the way that he always does, where he writes, he'll write a song out on guitar. He'll pretty much get it all the way out. Whereas Nate and I flesh it out part by part. And with that, you get kind of two different writing styles. You get two different songs. So, it's kind of neat to do it that way. And that's part of the reason that there's a lot of variety and diversity on the Familiar Gray, is that you have a lot of people with a lot of different styles and backgrounds coming together and writing. And that's kind of where you get a lot of that different type of kind of like how you said, like, not every single song is the same thing, or, it can almost be classified into different genres or whatever, so yeah, that's kind of that whole process.
Yeah, for sure. So if I can dig slightly deeper, let's say when he sends you the one section of drums, do you find that you have habits or like a checklist of how you go about it, or do you literally just noodle until something catches you? Because it's something I'm personally working on right now, of breaking my sort of muscle memory habits for writing and thinking of it from a more compositional standpoint.
So I'll usually kind of noodle. So if he'll send over a drum part, just he'll flesh, maybe he'll flesh it out and it'll be like a 30, 45 second, whatever drum part. And I'll just sit there and whatever, and just like flesh it out until like I've got something like, ooh, I really like that kind of bounces. And when you have drums right away to put to guitar work, it makes your idea come to life a lot faster than it would if you're just trying to flesh it out with guitar and maybe bass only. Because like when you have drums behind like a riff and you're like, all right, now that's hitting, now I fucking hear that exactly how I want to hear that. So it's really cool, like, and it helps me exponentially, because I'm kind of a guy that, like, I'll have an idea in my head, I'll have a riff in my head of what I want to do, and I'll have just, it'll be, maybe I'll have a hard time like bringing it to life, or really kind of figuring that out. But with the drums there, and with the drums there to back that up, that becomes a little bit easier for me. I can stay in time, stay in key. It just helps with a lot of different things for me. So, yeah, that's how I personally write. But like I said, Giovanni and Austin write really well. They can just flesh out a song on guitar, pretty much start to finish, or get 3/4 of it done, and then drums get thrown on there, and then we kind of go back and piece it together, and that's kind of what we're doing now. So, yeah.
Nice, yeah. So that while we're on the topic of guitar, because that all makes a lot of sense to me. But something else, you clearly the drums and then your relationship with the drummer is a good jumping off point. It's a tool for you. But something else that I've seen a lot of people say and definitely agree with is different guitars, different tones for the guitar player themselves can be a real source of inspiration even before the actual notes. So can you tell me about like your gear setup for writing? Is it the same as live? And then how does that translate to when you're tracking, like for real?
So we have a pretty basic setup in terms of tracking. We just use Reaper. I know sorry, Pro Tools nerds. Sorry. But we use Reaper. It's been pretty, for what we're doing, nobody's like a professional engineer. The one who's got the most engineering knowledge is my bass player, Austin. So we just use Reaper to track everything. We have, we use a guitar package, a guitar plugin package from ML Studios, I think is what it's called. I'd have to like actually take a look at it.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we just use for tone. It has like a metalcore preset, a hardcore preset, a rock preset, just for simple shit. And it's good to just be able to put together demos and scratch tracks and stuff, and then we go to an actual studio to start doing real pre-pro and actual production and stuff like that. So we'll just do, So yeah, in terms of tracking, it's a pretty simple setup. Just guitar. I have a Scarlett, which I'm using right now to record this. I have a Scarlett 18i8. That's what I actually use for my podcast, which I'll actually have to get you guys on sometime. I would very much
That
like
would
to
be
do
awesome.
That would be very fun. You guys are like one of the coolest pop punk bands we've ever come across.
Dude,
like
thanks.
dead ass, man. Like shit. I think it was one of the tours that we were playing together when we went out to California and we played with this pop punk band. They were good, they needed a little work, and we were like, dude, you got to check out this band. No, this is Patrick. And he was like, that's their name. I was like, yeah, man, like they're fucking great. So yeah, we're spreading your name all over the place.
Dude, thank you so much.
But anyway, so yeah, just guitar, Scarlett interface, Reaper, and just the stock tones that come on the ML sound thing. And then we have a drum MIDI, just a simple drum MIDI. It's not superior. It's nothing crazy. We're ballers on a budget. We cut corners where we can. So I'm sure every band at some point knows about that.
Yeah.
But my live setup, I actually, I don't know if I can say this, but we got, I have a cool, I think I can say I'm getting a Gallagher guitar. I'm getting a Gallagher. I'm pretty excited. I just placed the order about 3 weeks ago. Yeah, so I'm pretty stoked on that. But so I'll be using that. That for now, I just have I've always been an ESP LTD guy. That's what like all of these pretty much are. All this, that guy down there. Always have been. Love them. So. Yeah, clearly I have a big variety, as you can tell. Like same guitar body on all three of my fucking things. I have no variety, but
dude, but you gotta go with what works.
And that's what I love. I've always loved that classic, fucking Les Paul, that Gibson EC1000 style. But so anyway, yeah, have an EC1000 Evertune ESP LTD that I'm actually trying to sell. So if anybody wants to talk business, I have a guitar for sale. It's pretty legit. A couple of Seymour Duncan jazz pickups in there. Great.
That is enticing.
But yeah, right. But so I have that. I have a ESP LTD. It's called the Black Metal series. It's got a pair of Seymour Duncans again. I fucking love those pickups. Black Winners, they're the Black Winner series in there. Just has one singular bridge pickup and just a volume knob. I never knew if I would like that setup, like that really simplistic setup, but I do. And that's the Gallagher that I just ordered. That's the setup that I have there. So I'm pretty excited for that. But I have that running into a pedal board. I have an EVH 5150 distortion pedal, which has a nice like noise gate on there, which is really, really nice. It's got a boost and a noise gate, so kind of cuts out that screeching a little bit. Just got a tuner. I hardly ever use my tube screamer. I thought I would. I honestly only ever fucking use it when I have clean tones on. If I ever want to get fancy live, do you ever have that? I don't know how extensive your pedal board is. Mine is a pretty base. I only have like 4 pedals. Like I said, I have a tube screamer, tuner, EVH 5150. I have a Hall of Fame 2 reverb pedal, which I use sometimes, which comes in handy way more than the tube screamer. and then I just have a noise gate, noise suppressor, and that's it. And then I run that into a PV 6505 Plus. Comes out of a Black Star 4x12.
Nice. Yeah,
So-
that I am the same way with a pedal board. Like I keep it pretty simple. It's like a really small one. And I used to not do pedals, period, because I was like, oh, amp tone, blah blah blah. And
Really?
which I still am, but like as we started getting serious like a couple years ago, I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to do this and get closer to what I want. But it's very similar to you. I just have tuner. I've got the Digitech Drop, which is very helpful live because we do several different tunings. And then I was using the Precision Drive, Misha's pedal, for a lot of stuff. And although I just got a Keeley compressor, which I alternate depending on which kind of tone I want. And same thing like you said, where it's like it's a boost and the P drive has a gate as well that's very helpful. And then I have a clean boost, a spark, and the Dispatch Master reverb, which again I don't use as much because I don't know. I'm still getting a hold on that one. I don't know how you do with reverb, but I'm like, if it gets too much, that becomes a huge problem, especially live, because then you're getting feedback issues.
It depends. Like it just because it depends on what setting you have. Like there are some settings where like if you like accidentally drown your shit in reverb, it's just like it's fucking it's way too crazy.
Yeah, well,
it's not going to sound like that at all, but
like before when I first got it, I was figuring it out and it was kind of noisy, and then I felt so stupid because I had just never had a pedal to do this with. But Sean was like, "Dude, put it in the effects loop. Like, don't run it into the front." And then I put it in, and I was like, "That sounds so much better!" And I was like, "Duh, that's what it's there for."
Yeah, it's It definitely helps. Did you say you have a Digitech like down tuner?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the pedal where you can just kick it in and it drops your tuning, right?
Yep. Yeah, we saw on a rig rundown with August Burns Red. They were like, "Yeah, there's no delay or any of that," so we got them, and it's great, especially live. I try not to track with it because it does make it a little bit grainy, but live and when you're turned all like way up, there's indistinguishable.
Well, so I don't know if you remember. I think when we were touring through Nashville, we brought this band, Speaking with Ghost.
Yep.
But they have one, but they used to. Their guitarist Craig used to use it a lot. I don't think he uses it quite as much, but I wanted to get that, but at the same time, we don't really switch tunings a lot. So don't get me wrong. Because like I love the Evertune, and I'm sure by this point just about everybody knows. If you play guitar, you probably know what an Evertune is. But I don't know if you ever played with one.
I haven't. I wish.
So hey, man, she's for sale. But they're sick. If you have the opportunity, they are an audio engineer's dream. They stay perfectly in tune. If you want to, do bends on certain strings, you can set it up that way, and it's super quick, super easy. But to change your tuning, like if you were to do that live, you can't. It's quicker than a Floyd Rose, but it's not like you can't do it like on the fly. So to do that live, would be a pain in the ass, especially if you were a band that changed tunings to where you would need to change guitars or whatever. So to have that pedal would be pretty sick. But we were never that band that did that. But you guys are kind of that, like you said, you're like a heavy pop punk band. So you guys playing like down tunings, like what? Because I know that with a band like yours, even with a band like mine, but specifically with a band like yours, where your vocalist has some pipes first off, but a solid range like he does, you guys probably, at least when you first started, probably had to sit there and really figure out what tuning his voice really registered in, right?
Yeah, we still try and work with that, and when we started writing stuff before we met Andrew, we had lineup problems for like the first year and a half, maybe even 2 years.
That's how it goes, baby. That's how it always goes.
Exactly. But
ours were drummers.
Ours was everything but guitar, but drums was hard because our buddy was filling in until we found one, and he's not really a heavy drummer, so he was just doing us a solid. But his name's Alex. He plays in a really cool, chill indie band called Miki Fiki, if you want to look it up. But anyway, we started writing exclusively in drop B flat because we were inspired by Chunk No Captain Chunk. And so
who's coming back, by the way? They are making a comeback.
Did you see that it was like an 8-string riff.
Dude,
they're crazy.
They're writing some fucking ass beating.
It is going to be brutal, and I'm here
Quebecian
for it.
French pop punk murder beatdown shit. You know, we're gonna fucking
yeah, dude.
yeah.
Dude, and I love that about them. They can be goofy as hell and super heavy, which is part of what inspired us. And before we even started the band, our friend Ryan, who was originally going to be the singer before he moved, he was like, I'm going to tune my guitar down to B flat, because it was right after Playing Dead by Chunk had come out. Yeah. And we'd just been listening to it over and over on trips to Taco Bell.
Oh, hold on. Okay.
There we go. But yeah, I was just saying, like, we started a lot of our first probably 5 to 10 songs were just drop B flat, because that was the sound we started with, and we were like, well, Chunk's one of the only bands that does this, and we're not going to write every song in that style, so it'll give us enough to set us apart, and we had gotten used to it. But then when we did start writing even more in just drop D or standard, and especially once Andrew joined, we were like, okay, we can do some more normal tunings, not have to worry about, because at that point I was playing just a guitar with like 14s on it in drop B flat, and just to get the tone I wanted with the drop tuning. But then I was like, I think this might be holding me back, because more and more guitar players I admired were saying, like, yeah, I just use 10s, or some of them, a lot of the shred guys even are in 9s and stuff. And I'm like, I never thought that like a legit player would use that. I thought it would be too flimsy. So I was like, I'll go back down to skinny top, heavy bottoms. But then we needed the drop pedal, which was very helpful, because now on the record we're working on now, it's 50-50 between standard / drop D and a bunch of other tunings, not drop B flat, but drop B, C sharp standard, like just random shit. Like,
That's dope. That's cool. That's super rad. Do you guys do you guys use 6 strings, or do you guys use 7 strings? Do you guys ever go to 7 strings?
Just 6. I've considered, both Sean and I want to get 7s, just even for our own, just for fun.
Why not do a baritone?
Well, that too. Sean does have a baritone. That's kind of what I think we're gonna move to. Is we'll play our normal guitars with our perfect tones or whatever we want live.
Sure.
Just no drop pedal, and if we need the drop pedal, it's there. But then one of our lower songs on the new record are mostly go to drop B, or around there. So he's got the baritone, and I've got that other guitar that has that I can put really thick strings on. And then we'll just have a set, like, we will actually do a guitar switch, but it leaves options open and stuff, like if something happens. Because there's a couple that are just regular drop C, and that's the fewer steps down you go with that drop pedal, the less issue it is. But the further down you go, the fuzzier it gets. So
yeah,
going from drop D to B flat is the extent of, like, before it gets problematic to like a tone perfectionist like me and Sean. But anything between there, it sounds great.
So all right, this is great. So I have so on my podcast, Starve the Arts, I had a band on that you would probably really like. You should check them out. They're called Havens. Okay. Shout out one time. Super. They're not pop punk. They are. You could probably classify them as post-hardcore, but just very melodic. Very melodic. I mean, just a lot of their stuff doesn't even have distorted guitar in it. It's just a lot of clean tones. But I had their bass player and their guitar player on. Their bass player I've known for a long time. We actually we toured the East Coast together back in like 2016, I think. Those. Shout out to the fucking East Coast tour, whatever that tour was called, whatever. R.I.P. Anyway, but they were saying, so they're big, they're great writers, they're great musicians, but they were basically very avid about saying that, like, your gear, tone doesn't matter. Like, tone really does not matter. That like it does, but it doesn't matter to the point that people make it out to be. And that, like, tone snobs and tone chasers kind of waste a lot of time and get lost in the sauce chasing those tones. And, because I was talking about, I like Emperor cabs. I don't know if you've ever used an Emperor or know what Emperor is. Have you ever heard of Emperor?
I've heard the name and obviously the band too, but they're probably not related.
No.
But I've never played one.
So Emperor cabs are, I believe they're Chicago local, and you can only get them custom made, but they are like the low end in them is great. I love them for that. But they were just, Devin and Mark were just kind of like, nope, it doesn't really matter. Like it really doesn't, your tone doesn't matter all that much. It doesn't make that big of a difference. And, I'm probably not getting their exact words right, but they were the anti-tone snobs. You know how tone snobs are like, it's got to be dialed in just perfectly. You gotta really get that shit in there and really, really get it dialed. So because some people are like that, but I kind of find myself a bit in the middle. Like I want a good tone, and I think most of your tone is going to come from your instrument in general, like
how you're playing it. Lot.
That raw tone. Like for example, when I got this guitar, the black metal series, and it just has the one bridge pickup with the Seymour Duncan Black Winners in there. It was just super, like I said, just such a basic setup, and the raw tone coming out of that was perfect. It was great. So so I see their point, but I do see the merit in chasing tone, because there is you can really, when you really harness in a good tone, like when you're like, fucking that chug pattern just really is catching on, man. That sounds good. And you can really fall in love with certain tones too. So I see both sides. That's me trying to be a pacifist, but I see both merits in both.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say anyway. I think there's a level of nuance, or at least sort of variables to it, because I totally get what they're saying, and I don't disagree at all, because as long as it's as what you're an especially overall mix, if we're talking albums or singles or whatever,
right?
As long as it's listenable, that's one line, and then there's the line of are people hearing everything you're playing line. Then there's the which genre are you in, so how much does it matter?
Yeah.
And then arguably the most important part, if we're talking the tone chaser as the player themselves, is it what you need to inspire your writing, like we were saying before, where it's like if you find a new tone, that might inspire a new style, or you might feel more confident in your playing because you have the tone where you want and you've got that sweet spot. So it's variables.
There's so much, much like lifting weights. This is like knuckle dragger time. When it comes to, I think, tone, there's so many people have so many different, and so many professionals have so many different views to where it's so opinionated and subjective in terms of, finding the perfect tone, or finding the right one, or finding the best one, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of it is personal preference and where, you're sitting. Don't get me wrong. There's some bad tones. I know Dimebag has been recently catching a lot of flack.
About to say, it's a testament to how good he was tightness wise that you can tell what he's playing with that tone at all.
Yeah.
Let alone as tight as it is on the record.
Exactly. But also look at it this way too. Like back then, nobody was really giving a shit about tone.
Back then they were more. It was more prevalent. I mean, to outsiders or people who don't like it, it's still this idea. But the idea that metal or punk had to be hard to listen to or like grating or something, which thank God we've moved past for the most part. But I could see that factoring in.
Yeah, I think that I don't think that people back then, musicians, were paying attention to guitar tone as like they are now, and they certainly
Although you've got your Van Halens, and he's like the ultimate tone chaser. And Dimebag loved him too. I mean, obviously everyone can at least appreciate Van Halen, but yeah, I don't know. It like you said, it's totally person to person.
It absolutely is, and I think that but yeah, There are some bad tones, like fucking. It seems that for the first several albums, Metallica didn't discover bass until the fucking Black Album. Like you go back and listen to.
There's some interesting stories about why that is. Although I will say my favorite Metallica guitar sound is Kill 'Em All. I think because it's the most natural.
That raw
because
gritty
it was a hot rodded Marshall, so it was
Yep.
basically Van Halen adjacent. So like Kill 'Em All sound is my favorite Metallica.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 100%. That is that. Oh, I don't know though. Like now that I'm thinking about it, like Ride the Lightning is pretty good, but yeah,
that's my second. Yeah,
because the most. Yeah, I mean that is just such a raw capture. Just it just sounds like real metal, just metal on metal, just that type of shit, man.
And yeah, it's the clarity, it's the punch. Like and obviously Master of Puppets is a great album, but it started this trend of people thinking metal always had to be scooped. So even to this day, you'll watch like That Pedal Show or something on YouTube where these guys, they know what they're talking about, except for that they are not on the metal side very much. So when they bring it up, like, oh, I'll have to scoop this. And I'm sitting here just like, no, like get Misha back on. He'll tell you about mid-range attack. Like,
yeah. It's, we actually, so for this single that we just did, I love my bass player to death. And this is not to knock him. He's just very particular about his bass tone. I don't know if your bass players like this. I know a lot of other bass players that are like this, but they're very, he's very particular about it. And so he had to actually, because his attack wasn't clean enough and it was kind of messing with the tone, and the tone wasn't ringing through the mix how he wanted. You wasn't getting that like clank, that like really, when you do those lows and you get that nice, I call it clank.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that bass clank.
I say, yeah, clank. That is the word. And I'm never sure if people know what I'm talking about, but it's is pretty
clank,
key.
dude. It's clank. That fucking normalize it. That's exactly. I need a sign that says normalize using clank in terms of bass.
Legalize bass clank.
Legalize bass clank. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's perfect. But he had to go back and like redo all raw takes, like really, really getting like the attack, nice and perfect so that the tone really cut through, and like he did, like he crushed it. So, in terms of, sorry again, like we've traveled far down the wormhole, but, in terms of tone chasing, Arabella is not so gung ho about it. We can usually find a good tone and rest right in there, like a good, like, I like a tone that bites, like has some good bite to it. Like turn the treble up, turn the gain down just a little bit, get kind of like a, like, I don't know. I don't really know how to put it, but, that's just, and that's for hardcore, post-hardcore, melodic hardcore, fucking whatever you want to, classify it as. I think that's kind of where you want to be at, I don't want to drown it in gain and treble and turn those highs up and the mids down. I don't want to do all that nonsense. So I just keep it in the pocket, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's like a milestone in any guitar player, especially like heavy music specifically. Any guitar player going from like beginner to kind of knowing what they're doing to intermediate is realizing that you don't want that much gain, because at first it allows you to get closer to what you think it should sound like, but the more critical ear you get and the more you hear it in real life as opposed to on a record, when it's like once it's compressed and all that other stuff, it sounds like low gain is like squishier and all that stuff. But yeah, you want that balance, and I don't even know where I was going with this, but I'm just agreeing on the not as much gain thing, depending on what you're doing. Because if I'm like, again, subgenres, like that's where subgenres and the insane classifications come in to me, is either promoting to people who do care, or in like a writing sense of like, okay, give me such and such type beat, like give me a ska punk beat, but I'm gonna play black metal guitar with like scooped just I added a second treble knob so I can make
Right.
it pierce your ears kind of thing. Like being able to reference either specific bands or subgenres can be very helpful in a creative sense. But like you said, as long as you don't get too up your own ass about it and care about it beyond it being a communication tool.
Or you can be like every metalcore band right now and just steal that Architects riff that everybody knows.
Well, yeah, the riff, and then I have noticed there is a certain, I think it's like an Axe Effects preset that a lot of metalcore or metalcore adjacent ones will do. It's that kind of, it was on Jared Alonji's albums a lot. That sort of
yeah.
digital, it's not a bad tone, it's just very identifiable.
Mm-hmm. Well, now it is. I mean, like, oh man, that's got to be kind of cool to be a trendsetter, get so fucking big that like you write a riff and the riff is so catchy that other bands can't help but, just fucking rip it off.
Well, yeah, I mean that's how honestly that's how subgenres are born. Like
100%, because subgenres are literally just small tweaks on the genre that they are a sub of. For example, and I don't mean to knock this genre, but I'm sorry, deathcore guys, but like there's so many different genres of deathcore, and it's just like, if you're not deep immersed into if you don't know the defining factors of a deathcore band, sometimes ambient deathcore is different from fucking technical death metal or shit like that, and you're just like, again, you kind of get lost in the sauce. And so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I'm just sitting here shitting on fucking heavy music, but
no, but you're right, and I think, but the sort of positive side or the applicable side of that is like, for a death metal fan or someone who's into at least deathcore or something, it's literally just a primer for the first time you hear a band, because then after that point, that band sound is the band sound. Not like if you are in the same subgenre for every song, that usually sucks. Although with the more niche subgenres, specifically deathcore, you can stick in a pretty similar area. But that's all good as long as you can say, but it's all metal, or at least that it's all heavy music.
Sure.
Because if you're gonna be that person and someone's like, oh, I'm really into metal, and then you say, they're like, oh, what's your favorite band? And you say, oh, I love Suicide Silence. And they're like, oh, that's not metal, that's core. Like the core hate is possibly one of the dumbest things that I continually come across that is sort of going away unless you're on like
it's the metal
subreddit.
Yeah, it's the fucking metal weaves and the gent nerds that are like, if you're not playing in like 4 different polyrhythms in your songs, you're a fucking puss. Like, fuck off, like. So
yeah, and which the irony being that I personally believe that there is a certain line of tuning, and again, depending on the variables of the tone itself, there's a certain line of tuning where it becomes low enough or floppy enough that it's less heavy. Like, there are certainly some 7 and 8 string bands that I feel like if they played the exact same riffs on a 6 string with a good mix, it would be heavier than the 8 string.
You could get the same point across. Yeah,
it would hit harder, I think.
I've heard some drop C songs, like some drop C breakdowns, that hit way harder than those low tuning dun 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 dun. Those fucking.
Well, yeah, because it's what my friends and I call tuning to drop shit yourself, and then like a pencil on a sheet of paper kick sound where it's just taps and no body.
Yep.
It's no longer heavy.
Yep. Yeah, I think that kind of figuring that out and learning how to appropriately do that is good. You again, like there's a difference between just making your breakdown just pure nasty, just pure filth, and giving it some life and some melody and maybe some rhythm to it. And that's kind of where we fall in. That's kind of where Erabella falls in, and that's kind of what we try to do with our breakdowns. Give it a little bit of flair. which, we're not even really a breakdown type band. I don't know if you've ever heard of a band called Create to Inspire. You ever heard of them?
I haven't actually, no.
So they broke up a couple years ago, I think, but super dope post-hardcore band from Australia. Again, another shining example. Australia just kicks out pure gold. No matter what genre you're in, if you're from Australia, you're going to make it. You're going to be fine.
I was literally thinking about doing a video on that because I've already featured multiple Australian bands with more to come. Like, a lot of my top tier bands are Australian.
Dude, it's just ridiculous. It's like every day another one pops up and it's like, oh, look, Australian. Yeah, great. They're riff masters.
My theory on that, and this could be semi-ignorant, so Australians forgive me, but based on me outside looking in mostly at these bands or media people that I enjoy, it seems that because Australia has obviously an ocean culture in a lot of places, that sort of extreme sports like summer thing can never leave Australia. So that 90s sort of like X Games and punk rock sort of vibe still exists on a slightly higher level than it does in America, where like the mainstream has moved on so far away from rock that it's starting to come back around now.
Like, you think that part of their pop culture is behind a little bit, and that lagged a little bit.
I don't think
it's
that it's behind, because a lot of the trendsetters in pop punk and metal are Australian now. I think it's that there's just the percentage of people who are into alternative music is slightly higher for the whole population. That's my hypothesis. I have no data yet, but I want to interview Australian bands at all levels and just random fans and see if I can glean anything, because that's like a goal of ours. Is like, okay, certain bands that we love from Australia are still making a living in Australia being a band, even though they haven't been to America for years and years. So if people are that behind it there, we want a fan base there too. Like, we're trying to figure out, and I actually had someone I met because they commented, they're like, dude, I saw your sticker at a record store the other day. And then I was like, oh, where was it at? And he said it was in Australia. And I was like, what? I don't think I've sent anything to Australia. Like, how did that get there? Like, but awesome. That's exactly what we want.
That's sick. Holy shit, that's dope. I love hearing little things about that, with my band, when you get an email or something from somebody overseas and they're like, yo, this is sick. And you're like, duh, cool.
Dude, yeah, I that's one of my favorite things is even if the numbers, and again, this is month to month, but even if the numbers aren't where I want them or they're not growing at a consistent level, if I can keep seeing different countries light up as 6 people in Japan listen this week and 5 people in Germany and 20 in Canada and all that stuff, I'm like, that's super cool. It means
that's a win.
That's a huge win. It means people are connecting on a people who are probably pretty different from us, but also very much the same.
Yeah,
are connecting on that very much the same level.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the internet brings a lot of. It's a double-edged sword. It connects everybody.
Yeah, you could say that again.
It's made sharing music and getting noticed, I think, a little bit easier, but at the same time, it's an oversaturated market. The streaming is oversaturated. It's like anything, if it's a cash cow, it's, you're seeing it happen with streaming or movie streaming services. I just freaked out the other day because I'm a big Halo nerd. So I saw that Paramount Plus is doing, they have a Halo series. They're doing a live action Halo series.
I've heard that, but I've also heard that it might have already broken canon, and I'm very concerned. So I'll have to look into it. That could have been a rumor, but anyway, continue.
Not shocking. They're gonna fuck it up. I know they're gonna fuck it up. They're gonna take my childhood dream. The thing I've been waiting for, an official movie. I've seen all
or a Fall of Reach series, or just something equivalent to that. I don't necessarily want to see an adaptation. I just want to see the tone of those books get shown.
I would love that. God damn it, why would they break canon like that? Like, why would they think anybody would like that? Like
That's what I don't get. I
know that pisses people off. Why do you?
Yeah.
Why do studios do that still?
I remember seeing like this was a long time ago, but like for the biggest rumored Halo movie was when I can't remember his name who directed District 9 was going to do a Halo movie. Is it Blomkamp?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Neil Blomkamp
Yes,
was
it
going to
is.
do a Halo movie, and then Peter Jackson was going to produce it or something, and Weta was going to do the effects, and everyone was like, "That's awesome!" They built
I
a
do
Warthog.
remember this. I do remember this. Yeah.
And then, of course, it went away, and he ended
It
up
all
doing
fell
District
through.
9. But then recently I saw someone had unearthed some like production photos from that. They had started building things, and they changed the way elites looked. They like changed a bunch of shit, and I was like, I guess it's good that this got canceled then, because why would you take something that is popular in large part to its incredible design aesthetic, its visuals,
It's originality. Like
it's exactly. People were like, Master Chief looks cool as shit. All these aliens are super cool. There's a huge variety. And then to change that immediately, like, I do not understand that attitude.
I'm so terrified that Paramount's going to do that and that they're going to take this thing, they're going to destroy it. I'm so terrified they're going to do something horrible to it. Oh, man.
I'll just go back and watch Forward Unto Dawn again, because that
Right.
show slaps.
Oh, that show does slap. I talk about that show with a lot of people. That show is like, if you're going to, I don't know, take anything from it. And because, so Star Wars is a perfect example. Fuck music. Here we go. We're traveling down sci-fi tunnels. Star Wars is a perfect example. They had all the source material they could have ever wanted, and the lady who was like in charge, the CEO of the studio, was like, we had like no source material. We didn't have anything to work with, and everybody was like, "Are you fucking high? You had everything to work with. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, and I'm not so. I'm Star Wars is probably like my biggest thing, like nerd thing, and since before I can even remember, like I literally don't remember seeing them the first time, and but I'm fine with a huge portion of the old expanded stuff being taken away, because it was a mess, like it. But with the movies specifically, they came back without a plan, and like you said, they didn't take that much from the EU, but every other current Star Wars writer, from books to comics to now The Mandalorian and all those shows, absolutely is. Like, even when they were still when the first couple new trilogy movies were coming out, the books were already like one at a time. They would bring a character or a planet or a ship back into canon. And it's like, okay, that's what you should be doing, because like the MCU, the Marvel movies are not adapting one specific story, but they are using identifiable elements from all of them. And that's what the best new Star Wars content is, people who mine the EU and then also bring in new things. Like, I'm really enjoying these new High Republic books that have come out, and I keep wanting to get on. I see a look of befuddlement.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
It's a new series or initiative, because like movies, they announced a bunch of stuff that's several years off. We've got a butt ton of shows coming for Disney
okay, so
Plus.
I did see that, like the Bad Batch shows.
Yes,
Woo!
so Bad Batch,
Like,
Book
that
of
looks
Boba
legit.
Fett, Ahsoka, all that stuff. That's gonna be dope.
So I don't mean to interrupt you, but apparently there is a rumor floating around that they're going to somehow use the Ahsoka show to basically erase 7, 8, and 9.
I don't think that's the case.
I don't either.
What I do think it is that we are essentially going to get a new era, a 30-year period of Star Wars storytelling that will be what people wanted the sequels to be. The sequels will still be canon, but there's going to be a whole separate set of stories that doesn't have
Like
to tie into
in between,
those.
like in between 6 and 7.
Not always related. Like, So I think
you.
that's going to be awesome. And then in addition to that, there was this thing called Project Luminous that kept getting teased, and people were like, what is it? Is it a book? Is it a movie? Blah, blah, blah. And it turned out to be this publishing initiative where in books and comics and a couple other things, it's a new period called the High Republic that's 200 years before Phantom Menace. And it's even in the old EU time period that they never touched. So there's absolutely no baggage to it. So they're starting in a totally new period, and new, like, no Sith, or at least not a Sith main villain, but they don't ignore the existence, stuff like that. But it's new bad guys and stuff. So I've been on my commute to work and stuff.
Is Yoda in it? Because he should technically.
He is.
I was going to say
he's not in it yet, but he is mentioned every now and then.
Okay.
And he's basically, at this point, they're like, most of the time he does like groups of younglings, and he likes teaching like hands-on. So he's not out there. He's the number one guy, but he's not the main character.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Which has always been his character. He's never been the main character.
So they haven't messed with that, which is great. But basically, so I've been listening to the audiobooks as I'm going to and from work, just because I'm like, this is a totally new thing. I want to stay with it as it's coming out. And then I'll be on Facebook or Reddit or any of these things, and anytime it comes up, people are like, it's so dumb, they're blowing it like this and that, and they're saying it's like as bad or worse than the sequel trilogy. And I'm like, and they're saying stuff about it that it's like, well, you haven't read it yet, and you clearly don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And I'm like, I almost want to make a video, because Star Wars rants get a lot of views on YouTube.
They fucking do. Or like Star Wars theories, or like guys
and
that do
most
that
of them
shit.
are clickbait garbage, except for like Force Center and Star Wars Explained and a couple others. Eckhardt's Ladder, I think, a few. But because those bad ones get a bunch of clicks, I almost want to make like an angry looking video that's more of a rant about like why these like slanders against these new books are ridiculous, especially when these writers are doing such a good job. But then I'm like, I want my channel to be positive. I don't want rant stuff on there. But at the same time, I'm like, God, that would get a lot of clicks though.
Hey man, what do you want to win? You want to succeed? What do you want to fucking do?
It's all about the numbers.
Anyway, what do we music, right?
Yes. So yeah, here I'll let us wrap up here, because I do have a semi-big last question that I ask everyone.
Yes.
So now that we've educated people on Halo and Star Wars and some songwriting stuff.
Yes.
Who are 5 bands or artists that we have not mentioned yet that you want to shout out and tell people to look up in addition to Erabella?
Oh. So like I said, Havens is a really good one. Havens fucking shout out one time. There's just so many. Tanzan. There's a band out in South Carolina called Winter's Gate. They are super, super tight. Definitely, there's too many. But definitely check out When We Was Kids, Chicago locals, and then I'll give another shout out. Beatdown, fucking crazy band, hardcore band, Victims. So
I think I've heard of them. And then, okay, so last mini question. Explain, I feel like I was late to the subgenre term beatdown. How does it differ from like straight hardcore?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer this, but
okay, that's fine. I have assumptions, but
I'll take a stab. So like hardcore is very it's chord driven, you know, it's not so much riffy a lot. There's people that are going to hear this and go, this guy's a fucking idiot. But you know, whereas beatdown is very just brutal, like half the song is a breakdown. You know, that's
gotcha.
every beatdown show I've ever been to, you know, half the song is it'll be like a pick up like a two-steppy riffy part, like dun 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 dun, and so like it'll, you know, and like that's like half the song, and so it'll maybe somebody's taken that riff that I just threw out there, and they're like, oh fucking dun dun, yeah,
Sounds like they should have called it Doomcore because it sounds like the hardcore version of doom metal. Just
it's very brutal. Yeah, it's very brutal music. Like fucking. There is a band that does it really well that I've seen a few times. They're called Filth. I think they're from South Carolina. Maybe I could be wrong though. But yeah, super dope band. But yeah. No, I don't personally like go out of my way to listen to that music, but like I don't have anything against it. It is.
Yeah, I don't either. I see the term get thrown around a lot, and I was like, I don't actually know what they're talking about, which is sort of ties into contradicts what I was saying before that, it's good for people in the know, but I mean, you do have to figure it out. Sometimes genre names aren't the best. Like gent is still hotly debated. I think grunge is not a real genre. It's just a type of punk. Like, that's a whole other thing, but
you take that back.
Well, I mean, I don't know. There is, like I said, whole other tangent that doesn't go anywhere, so I won't do it. Thank you for those recommendations, and thank you, dude, so much for being on. I'm really looking forward to the new single. Let me know when you've got the release date set, and I'll repost this with the release date and everything as well.
Yes, hopefully that's coming out here in the summer. We don't have a release date yet for it. It's a definite ass beater. But don't get too excited. We're gonna go right back to writing more sad shit. So, yeah.
There you go. Variety. That's what we want to hear.
Hell fucking yeah, dude.
Dude, thank you so much. And hit me up for that your podcast too.
Absolutely will do. Take it easy, brother.